So I think I thought about this question, and I'm going to be very vulnerable and open and honest, and admit that I actually failed my first ever first year stats course, like quite spectacularly. I was not even close to passing. Um,
I
and
failed the first stats test in third year stats. I tell the students this, and I teach third year stats now.
oh, there you go. And yeah, and so I can definitely understand where students come from when they feel overwhelmed and don't understand statistics. And it wasn't it like stats, like I'd never really had to apply myself in school or anything to do well in academically, and that was the first time that something just wasn't clicking and I didn't know what to do. And the next, like after that, I only ever got HDs in my stats course. But when I was thinking about it, I got it into my head, and I know that there's lots of students that do this. Like as a cohort, we all develop this thing that statistics is just like really hard and really boring, and we're never going to understand it. And that mindset really isn't helpful. So you need to first of all believe, I think, that you're going to be able to understand statistics. And I approached it almost like picking up a new language. Like I had to understand the ins and outs of it, why things are done the way that they are. And I think first year stats especially digs into this, like the foundation on which all of our methods are built. I don't remember any of that now. Like I couldn't tell you basic probability theory stuff, but I now have taken that mindset to the higher level stuff that I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's so interesting too, because you say you approached it as a language, and that's how I say too, I approach it as a language. But to me, what that meant was it's almost like you have to memorize before you understand.
Yeah.
Like you were saying just now, you have to understand. But for me, it's like when you say, like in French, like horses, cheval, there's nothing to understand. It's just you need to memorize. But then once you know that, you'll be able to understand a sentence where you hear the word cheval.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, that's how I tell the students. It's like, there's a lot of memorizing, but once you memorize the sentence, you can translate it, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly it. Then I guess the thing about understanding the ins and outs is once you sort of memorize that base stuff, then you can use it to understand all of these sort of like sentences and whatever, and then you can use it to understand paragraphs. And so it's like you sort of learn the rules and then you keep building from there. But yeah, I just find I had so many students, so many of my cohort in my undergrad were they hated stats. They didn't want to do it. It's so difficult. A P gets a degree, had a very I'm never going to learn this blocked off approach to it. And I don't, as much as we'd like to think as researchers that we're the smartest people in the world, it's not that difficult. You can if I can understand statistics, anyone can, I think.
Put it in the context. Once, for us, I'm a storyteller, so I know it in the story and how it evolves and relates to the population that we're looking at. So for me, that works to learn stats in the story of the people and why we're looking into it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I think that is easier at higher levels, actually. I say that to the students, and I think it's true. If you get that far, you get close to your data, especially in fourth year when you have your own data, it is easier to love it. But
what I would say to people, and I don't know if I'm jumping over the place, but what I would say to people is my philosophy in life, and it's got me to where I am in my 70s, is that I'm not perfect on every aspect of research. Or every aspect of my work. So what I look at is I look at the task at hand, I look at what I'm capable of and what I'm good at, and then I look at the gap, and then I engage, resource myself to be able to meet that task. So, for example, if, as I said, maybe that's at 75% I might have this view of Indigenous people, but then the 25% might be engagement of that person from from that community. Or
Yeah.
could be somebody who's done studies in that area previously and informs me on how best to proceed. And, you know, it could be literature searches. It could be, as you said, looking at videos of what researchers have done. So you resource yourself. And when you are studying, you've got to learn the basics. It's different. For me as an Aboriginal person, when I first studied statistic, I had to change my way of thinking, my head, because I'm a right brain thinker, and this was logical proof, you know, like what is the truth here type of stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And that was a big mental shift for me, and it was quite challenging. And so I thought to myself, okay, well, I'll learn the basics on this and how the process, and then go with that. And so that's how I've done that. I've you know, not been daunted, but you know, the whole thing with research is finding the truth, the whole truth. And
we have a question like that. What would you tell students who are having trouble in their stats course? And I guess I'm hearing you say, well, don't be afraid, just approach it and learn it as one way to look at the truth, knowing that there's a wider perspective. Is that right?
Yes. I'd say with I've always said that people who are Indigenous students, they always need somebody like a fellow traveller to reflect things from. I mean, we have our supervisors, but this supervisor must be someone who's on the same page. When I was doing studies, I virtually finished my master's, but I didn't get back to it due to a family tragedy. Then it was too late by the time I got back, and etc. But my supervisor, even though she was in the healthcare area, she was in the self-help, she didn't think the way I thought, and it nearly drove me crazy trying to see how she thought and trying to meet her expectations. And it was such a challenging, I'm saying that word a lot, but a challenging time. So you know, some doctors are good for you, and so you really, if you're having trouble like that, really seek support on the side, and connecting with other students is good. And seeing sometimes when another student explains something to you, you just get it. And sometimes also trying to work through with what has been taught or you're learning, and try and put it into a familiar situation. So then when you think about stuff, it's the familiar situation will then match with the process. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do, yeah. That application to a context that's relevant to you and that you really understand is so valuable. A lot of times I believe people don't really learn statistics until they have their own data, and that's when it really sinks in. Yeah.
And so it's good to actually recognize what you're good at and what you're not good at, and force yourself, and to communicate. If you're struggling early, communicate with your supervisor, or and then also meet with the other students and chat through.
Yeah.
But then just do a little bit of work on the side on trying to apply that learning to your own situation that you can identify with, and that will stick in your head. So when you start to do it again, but research is ongoing learning.
Yeah,
it's ongoing. And you build and build and build, you know. And yes, that's probably what I could say about that. Yeah.
No,